So we're on Yud Taanis Yud Beis Amud Aleph, about 8 lines from the top. So now we're going to ask another question. Tashma. Da'amar Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Tzadok Ani mivnei banav shel Sinav ben Binyamin. I come from the family of Sina ben Binyamin. Upam achas chal Tisha B'av lios b'Shabbos. And there's one year, happens quite often actually, that Tisha B'av falls out on Shabbos. So v'dachinhu la'achar Shabbos. So when Tisha B'av falls out on Shabbos, we push it off. We push it off till Sunday. V'his aninu bo. So we fasted on that day. So on Asara B'av, 10th of Av. Below hishlamnuhu. But we didn't complete the fast. Mipnei sheyom tov shalanu. Because it is our yontiv. Rashi explains Yom Tov. What does it mean Yom Tov Shalanuhu? So K'dil Kaman B'Shlosha Prakim. We're going to explain again later on in Mesachas Taanis. Zman Atzei Kohanim V'Ham V'Chule. Meaning Ad Chamishas Be'av B'nei Parosh Ben Yehuda Ba'asara Bo B'nei Sina Ben Binyamin. That there were different groups, different families used to contribute trees to the Beis HaMikdash to be used as firewood on the Mizbeach. And what would happen? Because there's a story they were lacked, and therefore kavulahen chachamim lisnadev eitzim. So chachamim instituted that different families should donate trees to the Beis HaMikdash. Ulahavi lema'aracha uchshemagia zmano, and when their time comes, mivin oso, they bring it umadlikin osan al gabe hamizbeach, and they would light some of their branches on the mizbeach. Afal bisha yusham shar eitzim harbe, even if there were other trees there. Okay, he's just talking about the fact that when other families would give, when other people would give, if they weren't part of this, institution, then their trees wouldn't go on, their branches wouldn't go on until they actually needed them. Okay, then he continues. Rashi concludes there. So what happens is, so the day that they brought up their branches, their trees, was a yontiv. So it was a celebration. So what he's saying is, because now Tisha B'Av fell out on their yontiv, so they would fast part of the day, but they would not conclude the fast.
They made a yontiv. It just so happened the yontiv falls out of this.
Every day the institution was on the 10th of Av. This family was to bring the trees.
They made a yontiv.
So it's a funny day. You're right, because it could happen quite often that Tisha B'Av would is pushed off to the 10th of Av. So very often you can have this conflict in this family between when they have their personal, their family yontiv versus Tisha B'Av. So, and here too, but the reason we're bringing this down is because they called it a Taanis, and again, they didn't complete the day. So once again, the Gemara concludes, Hasamnami l'sa'uri nafshe be'almahu. Yeah, they didn't really fast because they wanted to fast. They wanted to fast, to pay themselves. Everyone else is fasting, right? Everyone else is mourning the saddest day in the Jewish calendar, so we're going to fast part of the day as well. Almost you could say in solidarity, but again, there's no real halachic status to their fast, and they can probably break it whenever they want, and etc. Tashma, and a third one, Da'amar Rabbi Yochanan aha betainis ad she'avo lebeisi. So Rabbi Yochanan would say, I'm going to fast until I arrive home. So there too, he's calling it a fast, even though he might get home at 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So there too we say, Hasam lishmute nafshe mi bein nisiyahu de'avad. So again, he doesn't actually mean to fast. All he's doing it is to get himself out of obligation. Rashi explains on the second wide line of Rashi, lishmute nafshe mi bein nisiyah, delo litrachuhu lemechal bahadayu. He didn't want to be bothered almost to have to eat a meal at the house of the Nasi. Shehaya mevakesh mimenu sheyochal imo. He used to, he would ask him, Rabbi Yochanan, come sit down with me. So he didn't have time. So he would say, I'm fasting. I guess he's thinking, I don't know if it's bothering himself. He didn't really want to trouble the Nasi to have to host him. Umihu lo habi tainis, but again, this isn't really considered a tainis. Shim haya rotza, if he wanted, haya ochel miyad, he would be allowed to eat immediately. Ve'ein beni joklum. He's not making a vow here to fast, and therefore we refute all these ideas that we're calling these partial fast days a tainis. Okay, back to the Gemara. Amar Shmuel. Kol tainis shelo kibel alami bod yom. Any fast day which you didn't accept upon yourself the previous day, lav shemei tainis. That's not considered a fast day, right? This is obviously arguing on the initial point we made, when we talked about the beginning of the DAF of Taanis l'shavos, which we said that was you didn't accept upon yourself until midday, and we said that works. But now we're talking about a full fast day, that you can only have a full fast day if you accept upon yourself the previous day. Vi yasiv mai, and let's say you decided to fast anyways without accepting upon yourself the mincha before. What have you accomplished? Have you done anything? Amar Rabba bar Shila dami lemapucha demalya zika. You are similar to a bellows, which is what you use to make the fire bigger in the oven, which is full of air. Pretty much you're full of air and you have not accomplished anything. So if you don't accept upon yourself the fast the previous day, don't fast, you're not doing anything.
I guess also if you said Anenu, it's a bracha levatol.
For sure, Anenu. It happens to be we don't when we say Anenu, it's not its own bracha. It's part of Shema Kolenu. You could say for the Chazan, but we're talking about probably talking about a Taanis Yachid here, anyways. But yeah, we're saying but you're right. You shouldn't be saying Anenu, and if you have a fast day that you have to make up for some reason, you're not doing it. I mean, I think we're saying you're not accomplishing that here. Okay. So, Eimas Mekabele, when do you have to accept upon yourself this fast day? So, Rav Amar b'mincha, u'Shmuel Amar b'tfilas mincha. So, Rav says b'mincha, Rashi says b'zman ha-mincha, afilu bashuk, even if you're in the marketplace, Omer hareini machar b'tainis, I'm fasting tomorrow, that's it. And Shmuel said b'tfilas mincha, Besofa at the end, Tosef as Ritzoi, when you're adding on these appeasements, V'tachanuni Macha Omer, Hareini Machar B'tainis.
You have to actually say it, right?
Yeah. I mean, nowadays, for example, people want to accept a fast. I think in the sitters they have a small Yehi Ratzon that you're supposed to say the mincha before, and that's how you accept upon yourself a fast. That's what he's talking about. Do you do it? Do you have to do it just during the mincha time the day before, or dafka as part of tefillah? So Amar Rav Yosef. So Rav Yosef stated, Kavase de Shmuel mistaver. Shmuel makes more sense. Tichsiv b'Megillas Taanis. Megillas Taanis is a book that we used to have of days that you are not allowed to. Even though it's called Megillas Taanis, these are days that you're not allowed to fast on. So it says in Megillas Taanis, Lahen kol inish diyese alohi mikabas dana. So if it happens to be that a person accepted upon himself a fast before, we can say before these holidays, so yesar. So we're assuming, we'll see what yesar means. So my love, when it says yesar atzmo b'tzilo, doesn't it mean that he has to prohibit himself from eating in tefillah? So the way we want to understand this brisa is that if you you accepted upon yourself to fast the next 10 Monday and Thursdays, whatever it is, and then but one of those Mondays and Thursdays happens to be a day which is a day of Megillas Taanis, which you wouldn't be allowed to fast. So we're saying yesar, that you have to. So we're assuming that means that you have to prohibit yourself from davening the previous day, meaning the day before that. Even though you accepted upon yourself to fast, let's say 5 weeks ago, unless the day before that fast you re-accept it in tefillah, the mincha before, and you say tomorrow I'm going to fast. So if you say that, then you're allowed to fast, even though the Chaim instituted you shouldn't fast on that day. But if you don't say it in the tefillah the night before, then you would not be allowed to fast. So here we want to say this is a proof for Shmuel. So we respond, no, that's not what it means. What it means is ye'aser atzmo. Instead of yesar, I think being more in the verb that he has to prohibit himself, he has to do something active the day before. Here we're saying it's ye'aser atzmo. He himself is prohibited, meaning he doesn't have to do anything else as long as he accepted his fast at that time. Let's say that was 10 weeks earlier at his during mincha, not even during tefillas mincha. I think that's enough.
How could a person feel permitted to say that he's going to institute a fast when the Chachamim have prohibited?
So
that could be permitted.
So we're gonna. So it's a bit. I think it's a bit unclear what it's talking about here. Later, in a few lines, we're going to talk about the idea of. It could be that we're talking about a fast before the institution. It could be that the institution wasn't. So that we're going to see that idea. Even if we're saying it already has been instituted, it could be once you made a neder and your neder's been chal because you started with these fasts, maybe that would override. So I think both ways it might be able to work. So the Gemara asks the first wide line on your Beis Amud Aleph, Pligi beha Rabbi Chia Rabbi Shimon v'Rebbi. So Rabbi Chia and Rabbi Shimon v'Rebbi actually argue about this specific point, about that line in that Megillas Taanis. Chad Amar Yesar. One thinks it says again Yesar that you have to. Seems to be at the prohibit. You have to say something the mincha. You have to say something the mincha before. And Chad Amar Yeaser, that it already is prohibited. You don't have to do anything else. So man da Amar Yesar Kidamrinan. So the one who says Yesar, that's the way we just explained it before. But Laman da Amar Yeaser, so Maihi. So right, Rashi says, "Mi Kasavar." What does he hold? What is it based on? So we say the Tanya. We quote the Brisa. Megillas Taanis. Again, we quote the same thing. Megillas Taanis. Kol inish de Yese Alohi Mikadamas Dana. So anybody who accepts upon himself a fast, before the holiday, Yeaser, he is prohibited from seemingly eating. Ketzad, what's the case? Yachi shekibel alav sheni v'chamishi shokol hashana. Let's say you had a man who accepted upon himself to fast Monday and Thursday throughout the year. Kol shana kula. V'ir ubam yamim tovim haksuvim Megillas Taanis. And then on some of those Mondays and Thursdays, again, we have these days that were included in Megillas Taanis. So im nidro kodem ligzera seinu. If his neder came before we instituted this holiday, so then Yivatel Nidro as Gzera Seinu. The neder wins out. The neder came before our Gzera. He made his neder, so we can't, override it. But V'im Gzera Seinu Kodem es Nidro. But if our Gezerah came before his neder, then Tevatel Gezerah Seinu es Nidro. Then our Gezerah would override his neder. So it depends. It depends what comes first. If your neder came first, then that's going to win. If the Chachamim institute this holiday first, they're going to win.
So he'd have to make up these days.
See, so that's what Tosfos here talks about that. If you look in Tosfos, seeing Zerasenu Kodem Nidro Yidchek Nidro Mitnik Zerasenu Omer Rashi Yidchen Nidro Mikol Vakova Lo Yashlim also Taanis. So Rashi says that you don't fast at all. The Harim is Supak Badavar, and he doesn't know. That maybe so it should be machmir that on that day you shouldn't fast. Of Yashlim also Liyom Machar. You should make it up a later date. Nowadays we don't. The only two holidays that we keep from Megillas Taanis are Hanukkah and Purim. We don't keep any later days listed there. Okay, back to the Gemara. Tan Rabbanan. So back to the ideas of fast days. Ad masai ochel b'shose. Until when, if you accept upon yourself a fast, so right, Rashi says, B'layla kashem mis'aden l'machar. When you're going to fast the next day, b'chol taniyoshu ochel mishetech. Most fast days, the fast only begins in the morning. So how late are you allowed to eat? When do you have to stop eating? So ad sheyala amud hashachar. First opinion says until dawn. Divrei Rabbi Eliezer, but Shimon Omer ad kiros hagever. He says no. I think an earlier time, and that is until the rooster. As soon as the rooster calls out, it's forbidden to eat. So Amar Aryai is going to qualify this. Lo shanu ela shelo gamar seudaso. This only applies if you have not finished your meal. So you're pulling an all-nighter and you're having a long meal, and then it's getting late. When do you have to finish your meal? Kiros hagever or amud hashachar. Aval gamar seudaso. If you finished your meal already, so then eino ochel. Once you finish your meal, even if you finish your meal at 12 o'clock at night, you're not allowed to eat anymore. So isbei Rava taught Rava Gamar ve'amad. If you finish your meal and you stand up, Raizel ochel. It says if you finish your meal, you're still allowed to continue eating. So how do we answer? Hasam kishalosi. So we respond saying no, because in that case, even though Rava was the case where he finished his meal, he said you're still allowed to eat. That's when you haven't cleared the table. So you could have been you finished your meal, could have been you benched, but all the food's on the table, they didn't clear it, and therefore it's as if the meal wasn't concluded, and therefore they can continue eating. But in the case where we said you finished your meal, that's when the table was cleared as well. Or Ika da Amri, there's another version of this. Amar Rava lo shanu ela kishelo yashein. This only applies if you haven't gone to sleep yet. Aval yashein, if you've gone to sleep, eino ocha. Once you sleep, you're not allowed to eat. Right? This is nowadays they say if you want to go to sleep and wake up before a fast day, you're supposed to make it tonight. You're supposed to make a condition that you plan on eating. Before the fast. I think this is based on this idea, because it's saying here that once you go to sleep, you're not allowed to eat anymore. But maybe if you make a condition before you say, I'm going to sleep, but I still plan on eating another meal, I guess we're assuming that works.
You have to be proactive and set an alarm. You can't just say, if I get up.
you have to.
It's not enough for tonight.
In terms of making it tonight.
Yeah.
Why? I'm not sure why that should make a difference.
Because it's just be, if I get up, I'll eat. But I heard you be proactive and like say.
Okay, I'm not sure. Okay, I trust you. I just don't know why that would. Halachically, I'm not sure why that would make a difference. Maybe that we're saying that makes it a better. Maybe that makes it a better tonight. When you say you tonight, you have to be serious about it. So it could be. Okay. So Isbe, but then again we have the question. Abaye Yashin ve'amar. He says if somebody sleeps and gets up, Raizel ochel. So what's he talking about? So Hassan ben Isnam name. That's not somebody who actually went to sleep. That's somebody who's dozing off a bit.
Drimmel.
So sorry.
A drimmel.
A drimmel. Okay. Hechidami misnam name. So what is this case? How do we describe somebody in this state? Amar Rav Ashi nim velo nim tir velo tir. He's sleeping, but he's not really sleeping. He's awake, but he's not really awake. Right? Probably somebody who's like head bobbing. You know, they're kind of awake and they. So the karule ve'ani that they if you call him, then they'll answer. But velo yada ahadure svara. But they can't really give you any, intelligent answers to anything. But midkar. But if you kind of remind him about something, then he'll be able to recall it. So he's in this. So if somebody's in that state, that's not really sleeping, and then if they wake up, they can continue eating. But if they're really sleeping, went to bed, no longer can eat. Okay. Amarav Kahana Amarav Yachi Shakiba Alav Taanis. An individual accepts upon himself a fast. Aser ben Ni'ilas a sandal. He's not allowed to wear Ni'ilas a sandal. Generally, Ni'ilas a sandal. Not wearing leather shoes is designated for us Tisha B'Av and Yom Kippur, or we'll see soon also for when it doesn't rain and they have to declare more fast days, so the fast days become more extreme, and therefore they wouldn't wear leather shoes in those days as well. But here we're saying even an individual accepts upon himself a fast shouldn't wear. Why? Chayshin, and we're concerned. Shema Taanis Tzibur Kibo Alav. We're concerned when he accepted upon himself a fast, he was accepting upon himself a fast similar to a Taanis Tzibur. So the Gemara asks, so Heichili Avi. So what should he do to make sure not to run into these problems? Amar Rava Bar Rav Shila Lema Hachi. Should say as follows: Lemachar Ahal Lefanecha B'Taanis Yachid. When he accepts upon himself a fast, he should make sure state clearly that it's a Taanis Yachid, and then the only prohibition would be eating and drinking, and there wouldn't be any problem of wearing leather shoes. Okay, Amrule Rabbanan the Rav Sheshes. So Rabbanan Ha Kachazinan Rabbanan. We saw many rabbis the Misaime Masnaihu that they put on their shoes, their leather. Ve'asu leBAYT Taanisa, and then they came to shul on the fast day. So Ikvid, Rav Sheshes was pretty mad. Ve'amar lehu, and he said, maybe Dilma Mechol Nami Achol. Once they're wearing leather shoes, maybe they're going to go ahead and eat as well. So what's going on here? So look at Rashi Ka'asu Rabbanan the Taanisa. So we're talking about B'Taanis Tzibur. We're talking about, again, a communal fast day. B'Savri La K'Shmuel. And these rabbis held like Shmuel, De Amar Ein Taanis Tzibur Bebavel. That there's no idea of a Taanis Tzibur in Bavel, like we say in Perak Makom Shenagu, De Asr Ben Ilas Sandal V'Chol Hani. Meaning you can have fast days in Bavel, but he's saying that you can't have a fast day. The strict fast days where we prohibit probably washing and anointing yourself, and also wearing leather shoes. So Rav Sheshes obviously didn't hold like Shmuel and thought they were in total violation of the fast day, and he thought soon enough they'll come to eat on the fast day as well. So the next story, Abai v'Rava Ma'alye. So they went up to Babel Ki Mesaime Apanta. Sorry, they went up to Shul Ki Mesaime Apanta. So when they went up to shul on the fast day, they were wearing, I think, shoes with no leather on the bottom, only leather on the top. Marimar Marzutra Mechalfe Diyamina Lismola V'Dismol Yamina. And Marimar Marzutra on the fast days would switch their shoes. They wear the right on the left and the left on the right. I think these are both opinions that hold like Shmuel, that say that it would be permitted to wear regular shoes on these fast days, but they're deciding to be machmir. So Rabbanan debate Rav Ashi nafki kiorchayu, and the rabbis in the Talmidim of Rav Ashi on fast days they'd go out wearing their regular clothes, their regular shoes. Savri, because they held ki hadamar Shmuel ein Taanis Tzibur bebavel ela Tisha B'Av bilvad. Tisha B'Av is the only one that has a Taanis Tzibur, and therefore on Tisha B'Av we don't wear leather shoes, we don't do rechitza and sicha. But for these other fast days, that prohibition in Babel doesn't apply, and therefore they would wear their shoes. Okay. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav. So lo ve'adam ta'aniso uporeya. So Rav Yehuda says in the name of Rav that a person can, take a loan out on his fast and pay it back. Meaning, if a person doesn't, can eat, accepts upon himself a fast day, he can eat on that day, and then he'll pay back the fast on a later date. He'll fast on another day. Ki amrise kame de Shmuel. When they told us to Shmuel, Amar li. He responded, "V'chi neder kibel aleha." This man, when he said to fast, he accepted upon himself a vow, de lo sagi de lo mishalim, which would require him to pay it back. No, he says he only accepted by himself the idea to, pay himself on to do tshuva, whatever it is. So imatzi, if he's able to finish the day, so matzar nafshe, great. So then let him afflict himself. But yilo matzi, if he's unable to, lo matzar nafshe, he doesn't have to afflict himself. Meaning, according to this version of the brisa, there is no. Not Bryce, but according to this version of the Gemara, we're saying that there's no reason to make up the fast. If you break your fast, so you break your fast. Okay. But Ika da Amre, but there's another version, Amar V'Yehuda Amar Rav Lo Ve'adam Taniso Poreya. Ki Amri Se Kame de Shmuel, when they told us to Shmuel, Amar Li said, Pshita. Obviously he has to make it up. Right? Lo Yehei Ela Neder. No, he is accepting upon himself a vow. So Neder mi lo matzi bar l'shlumi umezal l'machar l'yom achrini. When it comes to a vow, if you don't fulfill it now, you can do it the next day or the next day. So two different versions. When you accept upon yourself a fast, what are you doing? Are you accepting upon yourself like a vow? And therefore, if you can't do it on that day, you're going to have to make it up at a later date. Or is it not a vow? Are we dealing here with some sort of commitment to paying yourself? And therefore, great, if you can do it, do it. But if not, you don't have to make it up at a later date. Okay, next story in the Gemara. So Rav Yehoshua Breder Rav Idi Ikla Lebei Rav Asi went to Rav Asi's house. So Avdule Egla Tilta. They made him a very fancy type of cow. So Amruleh, they told him Lito Marmidi. So, please eat some food. So Amruleh, he says, no, B'Taanisa Yasivna. No, I'm fasting, I can't eat today. Amruleh, you should tell him, okay, the Lozif Mar, the Lifra, no, eat now and you'll pay back your fast another day. Lo Savar Mar Lahadam Rav Yehuda Amar Rav. Don't you hold like the statement that we just said? Lo ve'adam ta'aniso poreya, that you can, eat now and make it up at a later date. So Amar Laho, he said, yeah, I do hold that, but Taanis chalamhu. I'm fasting a Taanis chalam. If you have a bad dream, then you're supposed to fast the next day to make up, so to make sure that anything that happens in that dream won't take place. The Amar Rabba bar Machsaya Amar Rav Chama bar Giura Amar Rab Yafet Taanis lechalom ke'esh lin ores. Right, a fasting for a dream, to make sure to eradicate the dream is as good as fire. So it gets a piece of flax. It will burn it up in a second and destroy it. So if you're going to fast, that will destroy anything that happens in your dream. And Rav Chisda says it has to be on that day. You had a dream, last night. You don't have to fast today. The Amar of Yosef Afilu b'Shabbos. Or Yosef says, even on Shabbos, you have a bad dream Friday night, you fast Shabbos day. But my takante, we don't like this idea of fasting on Shabbos. So how do you make up for the fact that you fast on Shabbos? It's something you have to eat more another day. It's actually liyasef tanisa l'tanisa. You have to fast again. You fasted on Shabbos. We don't like that you fasted on Shabbos, so now fast the next day as well to make up for the fact that you fasted on Shabbos. Okay, now the Mishnah continues. What happens if it hasn't rained yet? So we've already instituted 3 fast days. It hasn't rained. So Avro Ela Velonanu, Beis Din goes to Gimel Tanius Acheros al Tzibor. 3 more fast days on the Tzibor. Ochlin b'shosin mibod yom, meaning you have to start. You can eat and drink until the end of the day, meaning the fast begins the night before. So it's a 24-hour fast, like let's say Tisha B'Av. Ve'asurim b'melacha, can't do melacha, v'rechitza, v'sicha, v'nila sasanda, v'tashmi shamita, v'noli nasam rechatzos, and we close up all the bathhouses. Okay, so these are pretty much 3 Tisha B'Avs. So Avru Eilu V'lo Nanu. So let's say those pass and they're not answered. So Beis Din goes to Od Sheva, another 7 altogether. Shehin Yud Gimel Tanios al Tzibor. So altogether it will be 13 fast days. Hare Elu Yisirus al Rishonos. These are even more strict than the previous ones. Shebe Elu Masrin. We blow the shofar. They're chatzotzush on these days. Benoalin Esach Chanuyos. We close up all the stores. But B'Sheni Matinim Chashecha. But on the Monday nights of the fast days, we open up the stores towards the end of the day so people can buy food they can eat after the fast. And Thursdays they can be open all day so you can buy food to prepare for Shabbos. But but if these pass and you're still not answered, so then then the Jewish people go into a state of sadness. We do less business, bevinyan, less building, and netiya, less planting, less engagements, fewer weddings. And we don't go ahead, all joy saying hi to everyone. Right, we're like people who are disgraced, walking away out of their line. Right, similar ideas come up. Misha nichnas av. We say when Rosh Chodesh Av memati besimcha, we quote many of these same ideas. So hayechidim chozrin umisa'anin ad sheyetze Nisan. So the pious individuals, let's say, would go continue fasting until Nisan. Yatza Nisan, but if Nisan is past the Yardu Geshamim and then it rains, so Siman Kalahu. At that point, it's already it's a curse. Shneimar quotes a passage from Shmuel. Look, Tzirchitim Hayom. He's saying it's the harvest season. It shouldn't rain. He makes it rain, but the point is that shouldn't rain at that time of year. Okay, the Gemara asks, okay, so I understand why you're gonna forbid rechitza v'sicha v'tashmi shamita, because all those have tanug. Aval malacha tzarhu, who likes going to work, right? That's a pain. Why are we going to prohibit people from working on these days? Amar Rav Chisda, Amar Rav Yirmiyah bar Ava, Amar Kra, so they quote a pasuk from Yoel. Kachut tzom, right? Kiru atzara, isfu zkenim, right? So like sanctify the fast. Call was the gathering and gather together all the zikenim. So katzeres, so we compare the tzom to the atzeres, and atzeres, in Lashon Chazal is Shavuos. So Rashi says Shmini Atzeres as well. So ma atzeres asur b'asiyas malacha. Same way you're not allowed to do malacha on Shmini Atzeres or Tisha B'av. Af Taanis asur b'asiyas malacha. So too on the fast day you can't do malacha. So we say ima atzeres mi'orta af Taanis nami mi'orta. Well, when it comes to not doing malacha on Shavuos, you can't do malacha all day, right, from the previous night. So maybe when it comes to doing malacha on the fast days, it applies to the previous night as well. Amar Rabbi Zera l'didim efar shalei minei de Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Ava. No, I hold like Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Ava. Amar Kra, that they, based on the last words of the psukim, isfu zikenim, that this whole idea has to be dumia da asifas zikenim, similar to the gathering of the zikenim. Ma asifas zikenim bayom, same way the asifas zikenim takes place during the day. Af tzom nami bayom. So too, when it comes to Isser Malacha on the fast day, that's only going to apply during the day. So the Ema mitihara. So we say maybe that should only apply in the afternoon. So Amar Rav Shishis Braid Rav Idi Misayele Rav Huna. No, I think it's a proof to Rav Huna Damar Mitzafra Kinufia, that they would gather even in the morning, and therefore the whole day is considered time for the gathering, and be Isser Malacha all day. So Heichi Abdi, meaning, so what was the point of this gathering all day? What did they do together when they gathered all day on the fast day? So Amar Abaye Mitzafra ad Palga Diyoma, from the morning until Chatzos Me'ainin B'mili Demasa. Right, so Rashi says they look into the inner workings of the community, meaning Drisha v'chakira, they would investigate, livdok b'masehem, b'askib b'nehair, they want to make sure everyone's acting appropriately. Im gezel, b'chamas b'nehem, they want to make sure nobody's stealing. That was the first half of the day. Mikan va'elach, so then the third quarter, riv adiyoma, so then for the next quarter of the day, so let's say the third quarter of the day, karina and besafra v'aftarta, we read in the Torah and the Haftarah. Mikan va'elach, for the last quarter of the day, ba'in and rachme, they go ahead davening, asking mercy from Hashem. Shnei Amar quotes the pasuk from Nehemiah, "Vayakumu alamdam vayikaru b'sefer Toras Hashem Elokehem," that they read the Revis Hayom for a quarter of the day. They read in the Torah, Revis for fourth quarter day misvadim umishtachvim Hashem Elokehem. They go ahead and bow, and they would confess all their sins to Hashem. Let's just go with the next few lines in the next Amud. So we say, fine, Epochana. So great. So the pasuk in Nehemiah tells us about a quarter of the daven, a quarter of the day, quarter of the daven, and quarter of the day, confess your sins. Maybe that should be in the morning, and then in the afternoon we should we should go ahead and make sure that nobody's sinning. So lo sakadaitech. No, that's not true. Dichsiv, we quote a pasuk from Ezra. Ve'ela yasvu kol chared b'divrei Elokei Yisrael al mal hagolah. Everyone gathered to me. Uchsiv uveminchas ha'erev. In the afternoon, kamti mi Taanisi, and I stood up while fasting. Ve'efrasa kapi el Hashem. And I raised up my hands to Hashem. Meaning the davening, all that takes place in the afternoon, and in the morning they should, do the self-reflection, make sure that nobody is sinning. Okay, have a good day.